Hey guys, Jason here with RWB NetSec, and in this video we're going to start working with Recon-ng. There's quite a bit to cover with this, so I may actually end up breaking this down into separate videos. So we'll see how it goes as I work through it. So let's go ahead and get started here. So Recon-ng is a web recon framework. It was written by Tim Tomes of Black Hills Information Security. It functions like a lot of other frameworks you may be familiar with, like Metasploit and the Social Engineering Toolkit. So if you've used either of those before, then using Recon-ng will have a similar feel and look to it. It's built around modules that include different functionality, such as doing recon, exploitation, and discovery. It's not a replacement for Metasploit or SET. It's focused on doing recon against a target. There are several websites that it uses to gather information. Some of the sites are Google, Bing, LinkedIn, and Jigsaw. And it works by sending queries to these sites in order to scrape information, just depending on which module you're using. Recon-ng was written in Python, so if you're familiar with Python, even maybe from a beginner to an intermediate level, you should be able to write custom modules which you can then import into the framework and use there. Tim has provided a developer's guide which includes a module template that you can use, so check that out if you're interested in that side of things. Just one quick note here. For this demo, the version that I'm using is actually a newer version than what is installed by default in Kali 2.0. As of this recording, the version that I'm using is 4.7.2. So if you update to the latest version, it's going to take care of some bugs that there were from the version that was installed in Kali. And you can do this by using git to clone the latest package from Tim's repository. And you can see, let me just go to the web browser here. I've got his website pulled up, and you could just use git, and this is the address to use to get the latest package. I would suggest doing that, especially if you're going to be following along with the video. And it shouldn't be too hard. One other thing to note, if you do upgrade to this latest version, there are a couple of Python libraries that you'll also need to install. Otherwise, you're going to see error messages when you launch Recon-ng. The first one is going to be the PyPDF2 library, and then the OLE file library. And you can install both of those using pip, which I think is probably the easiest way to do it. I'll have this information in the description, but I'll just type it here. So it was PyPDF2 and OLE file for the Python libraries. So get those installed, upgrade to the latest version, and with that being said, let's go ahead and launch the program and start taking a look at it. Alright, so I'm just going to minimize, or I'm going to close out my browser here. So to launch Recon-ng from within Kali, you'll go up to Applications, go to Information Gathering, and then go down to Recon-ng. I'm just going to pull this up here. So you'll see it does kind of look a little bit like what you would see in Metasploit or with SET. You can see here that it shows the different categories of modules that it contains, and this number out from each one just shows the number of modules that are in that specific category. So it has 81 recon modules, 7 reporting modules, etc. Before we actually start using the program, there is one thing that you're going to need to get set up in order for you to get the most out of using it. Like I said before, Recon-ng performs searches on several sites, and some of those sites require you to have an API key in order to perform the searches. I'm not going to cover how to set up an account on each of the sites, but I'm going to provide a list of the links in the description below, so that'll at least be a starting point for you. One other thing to note is there are a couple of these sites that require you to pay to get access to maybe some of the more advanced search features. So just keep that in mind when you're setting those up. Once you gather all your keys, you're going to need to enter them into Recon-ng. And Tim provided an easy to use interface to do this from within the framework itself. So there are a couple of ways that you can list the sites that require API keys. The first would be by typing in the command keys and then list. I'm not going to hit enter here because I've already got some of my keys entered already. But when you hit enter here, it would bring up the list of the modules, and then it would show if you've had entered any keys already, it would list those out as well. The other way is to use this keys command and then do an add space and then hit the tab key twice. And then here it will also show you, these are all of the sites that require an API key. Once you get your keys, then you could use this same add command. You would do maybe like keys add. You would type in the module that you're adding it to, and then enter your API key, whatever that is, and then hit enter from there. If you don't have API keys already for these sites, be prepared to spend some time setting this up. It actually took me the better part of a day to go through, and by the time I set up accounts on sites, got responses back from some of them, it took quite a while to get it set up. So just be prepared to spend some time, and I would suggest you going ahead and getting this set up before actually following through the rest of the video. So once you've got all of your API keys entered, we can come in and start, we'll just start looking at the basics of using the program. So here from the command prompt, if you just type in the word help and then hit enter, it's going to give you a list of all of the available commands from this context in the framework. And if you want to get more information about what each command does, you can just type in help and then the command and then hit enter. And then you can see there it shows you the usage for that command and any optional arguments that there's going to be. And we'll be talking more about each of these commands as we work through the tutorial. So the first command that I want to take a look at is the show command. So again, let me just clear this out. This command is going to let you view items in the framework, such as the included modules, any data that you've collected, and the actual database schema. You can use tab completion with the command. So for example, to see the commands that are available to use with show, just type in show at the prompt, do a space, and then hit tab twice. And you can see here, these are the other commands then that you can use with show. So for example, if I wanted to show the banner, which will just be what you saw at the beginning, or I could do a show companies. Of course, it says there's no data return because we haven't actually done anything in it yet. I'll clear this back out. If you do a show schema, this shows you how the database is set up. All the tables and the columns for each one. Now from here, if you do, let me clear the screen again. If you do a show options, these are all of the global options that can be set for using the framework. So you can see that it's already got a default name server set, threads, timeout, the user agent. And you can actually change these to change a value, whether it's here or for any of the modules that you're going to be using. You'll use the command set, and let's just say we want to change the thread count on this one. So you would do threads, and let's change it to 20. You'll hit enter, and you can see it shows that it accepted it. So now if we do show options again, you can see that the threads count has now been changed to 20. So it's pretty simple to use here. This name server, this is Google's public DNS server. You could also change this if you wanted to maybe use the DNS server specifically for your target if you wanted, but you could go in and set that option here. So staying kind of on this same theme, let's kind of drill down a little further with it. Let me clear the screen out here. So let's list all of the modules that are available to us. So we'll do a show modules, hit enter, and then you can see it brings everything back in the in each category. So you've got discovery, exploitation, import, recon, and reporting here. Sorry about that. So that's quite a bit of output, and you have to scroll down the screen for it. So say for instance you just wanted to see the reporting modules. You could type in show modules reporting, hit enter, and it's just going to bring back that specific category and the modules that are available underneath it. So it makes it a little easier to navigate through. If you know there's one specific section you want to look at, then you could just use this syntax and then get that specific category to come back. Alright, so let's stay on the modules theme for a bit and look at actually working with those. So there are three ways that you can actually load a module. If we go back, let's clear the screen and then go back and look at our help commands. You can see that we have two commands here. We've got load and use. Both of these can be used to actually load a module up. So you could do this by, let's just use one. I'm going to use Recon, domains, hosts, Bing, and web. So you type it in with the use command, hit enter, and you can see that it loaded the module, and now if you look, the prompt has changed. And that just shows that that particular module is loaded. One thing to note here, you'll see this word default at the prompt. This is not actually anything to do with the module that you've got loaded. This is one of the workspaces that you can have within the framework, and we'll be going over workspaces a little bit later on. But I just didn't want you to be confused by why this word default is showing up here. The other way to load a module, let me show you just quick. If you needed to back out of a module, all you need to do is type the word back and hit enter, and it will take you back to the standard prompt. So the other way to load a module is called smart load. So say you already know the name of the module that you want to use. You can use the word use, obviously, and then the name of the module. So for example, say you wanted to use the profiler module. You could type in use profiler, hit enter, and you can see that it loaded that module up without you actually having to go and search, copy the path, or type the full path in here. It just makes it a little bit easier to use and a lot quicker. One other thing to note with this, if you happen to type a word, let's just do Bing. If that particular word is found in multiple modules, it'll come back and tell you, hey, that word is found in more than one module, and here's the list of them. And then from this point, you could just copy it and paste it to the command line and use it that way. So then one other quick concept that I did want to cover here quickly is the idea of the use of workspaces within the framework. So a workspace is basically just a separate location that you can set up to store all of the data that you're gathering for your specific target. And this would be handy if you were doing multiple tests maybe at the same time. You could keep everything separate instead of having all that data stored in the same database. So let's clear the screen here. I'm actually going to go back and get back to this prompt. So right now, like I said, you see the word default there. That means that we're under the default workspace. If you want to see a list of the workspaces that are available, just type in Workspaces List, hit enter, and it's going to bring those back out for you. And you can see right now we've only got one set up. If you wanted to add a new workspace, you would do Workspaces, Add, and then whatever you wanted to call it. And I would just say call it whatever the name of your target is. For this one, I'm just going to do RWB NetSec. You'll hit enter. And if I do a Workspaces list again, you can see that it's now created that workspace. And if you'll also notice, the prompt has now changed to show that I'm in that workspace. As far as where the data is stored, let me open up a new terminal window. Each of the workspaces is stored in its own folder, and it'll be under your home directory. It is a hidden directory, so just keep that in mind. If we do an ls/alh, you can see here under our root folder we've got this Recon-ng directory, and if we go into that directory, do an ls again, you can see that you have a Workspaces folder. So if you go into there, and you can see there are different folders for each of the workspaces. Inside these folders, if I could type here, are the actual databases. Each workspace contains its own instance of the Recon-ng database, so it's keeping everything separate for you here. So any data that you gather for your specific target, if you're using a custom workspace for it, it's all going to be stored conveniently in this one database. And that way you don't have to maybe go searching. If you've got one database configured for everything, it may be a little bit more difficult to try to extract the data that you need. So these are the fundamentals of using a workspace, and we're going to continue with this as we work through the rest of the tutorial. One thing to note, if we go back to the Recon-ng prompt here, if you wanted to change to a different workspace, all you need to do is type in Workspaces, select, and then we could go back to the default workspace, and you can see that there the prompt changes again. So it's pretty easy to move around, and it's a good thing, you know, it lists it here for you, so it's easy to keep track of which one you're actually working in. All right, now that we've got our workspace created, let's go ahead and start working with the modules and gathering data. So first off, let's go ahead and list out the Recon modules. So we'll do a show modules Recon. And then I'm just going to scroll back up here for a second. We're going to be using this one here in just a second, but I wanted to show you something with the path here. The middle part of each of the modules paths, this actually shows the inputs and the outputs that module is going to be using. So for this one, this module is going to use an input from domains and use it as the output for hosts. So basically all that means is when you run the module, it's going to look under domains and see whatever resource record is there. So for example, if you had cisco.com or yahoo.com as your domain, it's going to then take that domain and feed it into the host portion of this module to actually run it and then get whatever results you're looking for there. So I guess that leads to the next question of how do you actually get input into each of those sections like domains and hosts and locations. Well, there are a couple of ways that you can do this. You can either set this on each module that you run, or you can create that record with the add command. And what that will do is actually create a database record for you. And then those records are what you will use as inputs for the other modules. So for example, if we use the add command, I could take my target domain and add it to the database without even having run any of the modules first. So to do this, and I'm just going to do, we'll do add domains, and I'm just going to use RWB NetSec here, and we'll hit enter. So now if I do a show domains, you can see that that data has now been set for that specific table in the database. Now the other way is going to be to set the data once you have a module loaded. So if we go back, I'm going to let's load Bing. Let's see which one. Load. Come on, Scooter. Learn how to type. Bing domain web. Alright, so once we get a module loaded, if we do a show options, you'll see there's only one thing that's required here, and this is where you would set your input if you didn't already have it set by using that add command. So here you would just do like a set source, and then you would type your domain information here. So we've already got it set, but it would just look like rwbnetsec.com, and that would set it for this module. But we've already added that to the database manually, so we don't have to add that again here. One other thing I wanted to note with modules: once you get a module loaded, you can get more detailed information on it if you do a show info, and you can see that it actually shows you who wrote the module. It gives a brief description of the module, and then shows all of the it shows the options that are needed, and then shows the database query that it's using to work with that data. Another thing that you can look at is the show source command, and this will show you the source code, the Python source code for that module. So it would be a good idea for you to sit down and, as you work on modules, sit down and read through this source code for the module. Try to understand exactly what it's doing, how it's working with the data, how it's storing the data, etc. It'll just give you a better feel, a better understanding for what's going on within the framework when you're running each of these modules. Alright, so now we've got our module loaded, we've got our options set. So the next thing we need to do is just to simply run the module. So to do this, all you do is type in run and hit enter. And we'll give it just a minute here. Of course, if you have a domain that has a lot of subdomains, this could take a while to run. But I've only got the one. So you can see it says it found one new host. So if we do a show host command, we now see that this host field has been entered with the www.rwbnetsec.com. But one thing you'll notice here, the rest of these fields are empty, so we need to focus on trying to get the data to fill out the rest of this information. So the next thing that we're going to look at is we're going to focus on trying to get the IP address field. So I know there's one module that we can use for this called resolver, so I'm going to do a use resolver. Oops, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Show modules recon. Alright, yeah, scroll down. Oh, resolve, my bad. Copy this. It helps if you spell things correctly. So we've got the module loaded. Now let's run it. And we can see now that we've got the IP address for that host. So if we do a show hosts again, you can see now that the IP address field has been filled out. So we want to focus on then just continually working our way through till we get the data for the rest of these fields. All right, so we know the categories of these fields are all going to be related to a location. So we're going to have to start looking at some of the modules that can bring us back location-based data. One of those is going to be free GeoIP. So I'm just going to go ahead and load that here. And if you do a show info quick on this, you can see that this one requires, it's going to use the IP address as the input. So since we've already got that, we shouldn't have to set anything else. If we just type a run here, and you see it came back, and if we do a show hosts again, and now we've got the rest of these fields filled out. So we've got the region, the country, the latitude, and longitude. So this should give you a picture kind of how you work to build out the picture of your target. You take each one of these pieces of data, use it as an input for these other modules, and then before you know it, you're going to have a huge picture of activities of your target, locations, and all of this data is coming without even having set foot on their property, without even sending packets directly to any of their servers. This is all open source intelligence gathering. All right, so let's look at one of the other tables in the database, the locations. So if we do a quick show locations, you can see that currently it does not have any data in it. One of the other modules that we're going to want to use, we want to do a reverse geocode using these latitude and longitudes. And what that's going to give us is a street address to go along with this city location. So the module we're going to use is the reverse geocode. And if you do a show info here, you can see the inputs that it needs are the latitude and longitudes, which we've already gotten from our previous scans. In order to manually add that data into the locations table, we're just going to use the add command. So if we do add locations and then just hit enter here, and you'll see that it's going to prompt you to enter that information. So we can just copy and paste that from our table. So copy latitude and then hit enter. Now it's asking for the longitude. Paste that there, hit enter. And the street address is what we're going to be going for, so you don't have to do anything here. Just hit enter again, and it'll take you back to the prompt. And then now from here, we should just be able to run this module. So we'll do a run, enter. And now you can see here that it's actually got a street address for the city that we had before. So now if we do show locations, you can see now this table has been filled out with the latitude and longitude that we had before. Now we've got an actual street address for this site. So the next table that we're going to look at is called push pins. And this is probably one of the cooler, if not creepier aspects of Recon-ng. So with push pins, you can collect data from sites like Flickr, YouTube, Instagram, and then show that data on a map. So for instance, if you use Flickr, if you use the Flickr pushpin module, it will connect to Flickr and use the geotag data that you've entered and pull down any photos related to that location. And then it will take that data and plot it on a map for you on a Google map. So if we, let's see here, we're just going to use the Flickr module for this one. So if you do a use Flickr and then do a show info, and you can see the inputs that it's going to use again will be the latitude and longitude. So let's do show options just to make sure all of that is set. So now if we just run this module, hopefully it will connect out to Flickr and start pulling down. So you can see it's found 699 photos that it's looking through. And this, of course, being done with the API key that we had entered. All right, 699 total push pins found. So now that we've got that data, let's go ahead and run one of the reporting modules and see what that data looks like on a map. So we're going to, let's use push pin reporting. Oh, good grief. All right, do a show options. And you can see there's three options here that we need to give it. We need to set the latitude, the longitude, and the radius. And of course we can get that data from, well, let me just do it this way. If we do show hosts again, we can, that way we can have it here. So if we do set latitude, and then we will just again copy this here, paste it. I'm going to do the same thing with the longitude. And then set radius. And we're just going to set this as 1. Alright, so that information is set. Now at this point, all we need to do is run the module. So we hit run and enter. And there's one thing that I've noticed. I do get some errors when I run this particular reporting module. So we may need to run the debugger and then send that information over. So with this one, it's going to launch Iceweasel for you. And you can see all that data that now has been plotted out to the map. And this green spot here in the center, that's the center of the location data that we input. And the rest of these, all those photos that it pulled back from Flickr, they're plotted here based on the geotag data that was contained in each of those photos, that's why I said it was kind of creepy. You can track people down like this and watch their movements, see where they've been, see where it was that they took the photo. So this is just another thing with open source intelligence gathering and the way of the internet, that there's way too much information out there, and people, again, like to brag and post way too much information, more stuff than they should. All right, so that's going to be it as far as running through modules. And we've obviously just scratched the surface with all the features, the power and everything that Recon-ng has in it. So as far as the modules themselves, I would say sit down and play around with those and look and see what kinds of data you can get for your specific target. Of course, that's not the end of the video, so don't start panicking or anything. Let me clear the screen out. The last things that I wanted to go over was just a few more of the other commands that we didn't cover as of yet, at least. The first thing I wanted to look at, as far as viewing data from the database, we know that we can use the show command. So if we did like a show hosts or show domains, We can view data from the database using that. There's also another command called query, which will let you run SQL queries against the database. So we could also do something like query, man, I can't type today, select all from hosts, and it's going to pull back the same data. So that's just another option for you to be able to pull data from your database. Now, if you wanted to view the database outside of Recon-ng, you can also do that as well. If you go to see applications, come on, or maybe not. All right, come here, and then go to database assessment, then the SQLite database browser. Give that a second to load here. And if you go to open database, and then we're going to go into that Recon-ng folder. And when you open yours up, if you don't see this folder, make sure that you have hidden folders set to be shown. So we'll go into Workspaces, RWB NetSec, and then open that database from there. And then you can come to this Browse Data tab and then change to the table that you wanted. So you could do hosts here, and you can see here's all the information from the database. So that's just another option. I'll go ahead and close that out. And the next thing will be looking at using a resource file with Recon-ng. And a resource file will allow you to kind of automate the way that you run it. And it's basically just a text file that has a list of commands in it, and each command needs to be on a separate line by itself. And there are a couple of ways then that you can call this file to be used with Recon-ng. So I've got a file created here on my desktop called cisco.txt. Actually, I think I've already got it open here. So you can see, and this is a very simple resource file, but I've got the list of commands, and when Recon-ng reads this file, it's just going to start from the top and work its way down until each one is finished. So I didn't change anything. Cancel. Just minimize for now. Let's clear the screen again, and actually let me go back and get out of this. So one thing that you can do, you can run the help command and look at that specific command just to see what the syntax is for it. So you can see it's just resource and then file name. So we could launch that from within the framework. So if I just do a resource, and then I'm going to do root desktop cisco.txt, hit enter, and you can see that it's automatically running through each of those commands that I had in that file. And then once it gets finished, it should bring us back to the prompt within Recon-ng. Now, this may not have been the best one to show as an example, but not sure how long this will take, but I'll show you here real quick. I'll just pull it up in another file. If you wanted to launch Recon-ng calling this file at the same time from your from a terminal in Kali, you just need to type in Recon-ng -r and then give it the path to the source file. So here it would be root desktop cisco.txt. That's how you would launch it from the command line. So the two ways to call that resource file. I'm just going to delete this. This was just another file I created that shows the modules that we were going to be working with. Let me close this out. Nope. You can see it's still working through all of the modules. Looks like now it's getting all the location data. And then you could take this data, and there's a lot of it here, and then you could start, if you ran this against Flickr or Instagram or some of those other sites, you could pull a pretty big picture of Cisco just using open source intelligence. Alright, it finally finished, and you can tell when it finishes, when it gets to the end of your resource file, this EOF, end of file, is going to show up at the prompt, and then it'll take you back to where you can then work in the program. And if you see here now on the desktop, we have a report that was created. So if we open that up, you can see that we now have a nicely formatted report that contains all the data that it just found while it was running through that resource file. So it did all of that for us, gathered all this information, and it took what, maybe 5 minutes or so? That's the power of Recon-ng and pulling all this stuff together in one location. I've heard people say at times, there's other ways that you can get this data. Well, yeah, if you want to sit and visit each one of these websites individually and manually pull that data out yourself, you're more than welcome to do that. But that's why these tools were made. They're made to automate a process because, especially for those of you who are professional pen testers or going to go into it, one of the biggest constraints with doing a pen test is going to be the amount of time that you have to actually do the test. So, if you have a tool that can cut out half of the time it would take you to normally do something, then by all means do it. But on the other side of that, don't be somebody who just completely relies on a tool and all you know is how to use that tool. You need to know what that tool is doing and how to manually do that same kind of, whether it's recon or port scans or whatever. You need to understand what exactly is going on with that tool. Don't just be somebody who runs a tool and has no idea what you're doing. It's just a point and click. And I guess I kind of got off topic there for a minute, but that was just my little rant and maybe some encouragement to help somebody. You want to understand the background of what's going on when you're pulling all of this data out. So just keep that in mind. So before I get too carried away, the next thing that we will look at is going to be the spool command. So spool will let you create an output file for all the actions that you're doing within the framework itself. And this will come in handy while you're doing a pen test. Say that you're running this tool for a client, and while you're working, something maybe breaks on their network. One of their servers goes down or whatever. A lot of the times the client may come and try to blame that problem on something that you've done. If you can pull out and show them this file, it will show exactly which commands that you ran and the outputs that you were getting for each command. That may kind of help show that, well, maybe it was something that you did or something that you didn't do, but you have this as kind of an evidence file for all of the actions that you performed in the tool. So let's clear this screen off here. I'm just going to do just a quick demo of what Spool does. So of course, to get help on any command, just use help and then that command, and you can see the syntax for it. So we're going to do spool start, and then I'm just going to do what we call it, Cisco. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so now it should be basically key logging everything that I do inside the framework. So if I just start going here, show hosts, show domains, Workspaces list. Oh, sorry, wrong context. But anyway, and then you do a spool stop. And now that file has been saved, and it's actually located under the user, this user share Recon-ng folder. So if I do an ls, and you'll see that that Cisco file was created. So if I, let's just gedit that file and see what it looks like. Gedit Cisco. So you can see this is the output. This is the format of everything that I did. Let me pull this over here quick. And you can see it. I mean, it shows everything, the prompt that I was at, the command that I ran, what the output was of that command. Here we've got the show domains command, what the output was there. And then where I tried to type in workspaces and I was in the wrong context. So you can see that this could be a handy file to keep around, just in case something goes wrong or you need to maybe go back and try to troubleshoot if you run into a problem with something you're doing. And the last thing that we will talk about will be the snapshots command. Now, snapshots is another handy feature within Recon-ng. It allows you to take a backup of your of a workspace database, and then you could also restore that snapshot if you needed to. So just for example, say that you've been doing some recon on your target, you've gathered maybe a lot of data, and then there's a new module that you want to try to run that you've not run before. It may be an experimental module and you're not sure how it's going to work. So before you run that module, you'll want to do a snapshot, and that way then when you run that module, if something messes up, then you can revert back to the copy of the database that you had before you ran that. So I'm not going to do a snapshot here, but basically if you just do help snapshots, good grief, sorry guys, I'll go back and take a typing class. Oh, that's one thing I guess I need to note here, and something that I keep forgetting. The help commands that are available to you depend on where you're at inside the framework. So you can see here, if I did help within the context of I've got this module loaded. If I go back and I'm just at the root of my workspace and then type in help, you can see that there are going to be different help commands that are shown. Under the context of a module that's loaded, you can see that snapshots and workspaces aren't available. So that's just something to keep in mind, and obviously something that I keep forgetting on here. But anyway, so we're back at the root context. So if we do help snapshots, and then it just shows you what the syntax is. You do a snapshots take. You don't have to specify a file name or anything. That's all you need to type in. And then to restore a snapshot, you just do snapshots and load, and it will revert back to the copy of the database that you had when you took that snapshot. Alright guys, I think that's going to do it for this tutorial. Like I said earlier, we've just barely scratched the surface of the power that Recon-ng has when it comes to, you know, us harvesting data on a target, especially open source intelligence. I do recommend that you spend some time with this program and dig down into all that the modules offer. There's a lot of modules we didn't cover, a lot of different kinds of data that you can get. Another reminder, again, with some of the modules, in order to use the API keys, there will be a fee associated with some of those APIs. So just be aware of that. And some of those are actually kind of expensive. So if you're not working maybe for a pen testing company, some of those modules you may not be able to get an API key for, but that's okay. With the other modules that are in the tool set, then you should be able to gather plenty of data anyway. So play around with this, see what kind of data that you can get on your target, and then if you're familiar with Python, maybe experiment with writing your own modules for the framework. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them below, and hope you guys have an awesome day. See ya. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If it's your first time here, I would love if you subscribe to the channel and share it out with all of your friends. So my hope is to build a community where we can help each other learn and grow in security, especially if you're just getting into it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And again, thanks for watching. I hope you all have an awesome day. See you guys.